right, 3 people waiting already. Cool. And we might as well get that started. Where are we? Long sighs. Good afternoon, team. How are you?
Hey, Henri. It's
How you
been
doing?
almost a day.
Almost a day. Long time no see, huh?
Yeah.
I know, right? It's I'm gonna say 24 hours, maybe. No, less, more. I can't remember anymore. I can't count.
It's good. Seeing a lot of each other lately. It's fun.
Yeah, we have. So, and I've enjoyed every moment. So, I just want to put that out there as well.
Same.
I was going to say there was a hesitation there, Scott.
I
know,
look,
right?
I experimented with caffeine a little too late last night, and learned that it works really well, a little too well. So I'm a little, a little sharp right now, or unsharp. Either way.
No sweat. Well, I didn't suggest Red Bull last time, but I heard you like St. Croix better.
It's the problem and the fix. I like
exactly, right. So what do we have set up today? Well, as some of you may know, we've sort of talked about this on Twitter and in other social channels, but something that we've wanted to do over at WebPageTest Live is feature some friends from the community, people we know. We do that already for the audits, but in this particular case, we wanted to bring on some people just to talk about what we're doing right now with the new web page test, the new features, the opportunities, and the experiments. And so we reached out to some people we knew and to see if they'd want to come on. And we definitely got a few to respond because their schedules are open. So we're delighted to have them join us. So what we're going to do right now is to bring on our first guest in what we're calling the phone-in sessions. And if I could, I know, right? It's kind of like old school talk radio, but online on Twitch.
Kind of like car talk or something.
Yeah, something like that, But let's bring on our first guest, and shebang.
There's Harry.
Yo, how's everyone doing?
Hey, Harry.
How you doing, man?
Thanks for joining us.
No, you're very welcome. Good to see you all. Seen a bit too much of Tim lately, actually.
Yeah.
And I'll be seeing Tim in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's currently turned into a thing right now.
Yeah, how's everyone keeping?
Good. Very good. Thank you.
Well.
Good to hear.
I mean, before we get started, I do want to ask you this one quick question. How was your conference?
Next question.
And
I'm not involved in the conference anymore.
Okay.
So I presume it was good. I presume other people enjoyed it.
Well, I'll edit that out.
So this thing that says live 3 minutes 49 seconds, is that just
it's just for effect. We're just trying to make you feel nervous.
Exactly.
That was great. That's how I start the show.
You know, I should have been way more gracious. Oh my god, it was amazing. You should have been there. It was amazing. Yeah. You should have been there. It was really good. Thanks for asking.
Okay.
What else is new, Harry?
Yeah, no one filled me in.
I feel like I see a lot of excerpts of your cycling life. Getting out a lot lately.
Yeah, probably too much. It's weird. Obviously, we've had 2.5 years now of just not traveling. So I've just leaned very heavily into riding bikes, which is great. It's good fun. So I've just been out in the last couple of hours, which is why I'm a little bit disheveled, a bit warm, wearing a hat. So apologies for my appearance.
Bit of a performance focus across all aspects of your life.
I say this a lot. I think the only reason I'm a performance engineer and ride bikes is because I'm such a nerd about numbers and data. It's like, oh, if we optimize this bit and go faster here and whatever, the two seem to go fairly hand in hand.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of a connection there. I know you've got quite a few best records or whatever for different stretches of riding the bike and stuff like that. I know that's a bit of a thing for you there too, right? I don't know what the right word is for that, but yeah.
Some metrics to track.
One or two.
It's the opposite of me when I ride a bike. It's all slow and embarrassing. It's good.
balance and all that.
You've never actually seen me
The
ride a
focus.
bike. It looks like a giraffe.
It's a valid point. It's a valid point.
It's a bit tragic.
Well,
I years ago,
Yeah.
because I'm like 193 centimeters, 6'4", 1 inch taller than Tim actually. And I remember years ago, a cycling commentator said, "Yes, well, of course, he is 6'2", and that's he'll never look good on a bike at that height." And every time I go on a bike now, I'm like, how bad do I look? That really stuck with me. That.
Yeah, that kind of comment will stick.
Yeah.
Anyway, no one tuned in to hear me talk about bikes. So
right.
yeah, should we move?
So I was going to say,
Well, I did.
Let's talk about the conference.
Yeah, exactly. We could do a web page test cycling special another day, but let's get into some of these pro features. So what I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to see myself off the stage. I'll be in the chat and make sure everything's fine. But I do want to let everyone know that, as usual, this is being recorded, and we'll be able to share this a little later. And this is the first of hopefully what will be many of our little phone-in sessions where we can have some amazing guests.
Having a coughing fit. I didn't want him to see that.
Okay, no problem. Okay, gentlemen, have fun, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Thanks, Henry.
All right. Catch you soon, Henri.
Whoops.
All
I gotta
right.
see myself out. Hold on. There we go.
All right. So yeah, I guess we could start by just sort of mentioning that I think in the last week we launched some pretty big changes on WebPageTest, and you're a longtime user of the product. I think a lot of how I've used to learn to use WebPageTest came from things I learned from you. So it's pretty cool to have you on the show, and I think it'll be interesting to get your take on some of the new features that we've launched.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what's really interesting about the last sort of, I mean, because of COVID and stuff, I can't even put a timeline on it. But since the acquisition, it's been really fascinating for me because I think I'm not a casual user, right? I use WebPageTest day in, day out. I'm so inside that product. So seeing how it's morphed and transformed and how it's started to democratize performance a bit more. It's not just for people like me. It's now for people who are just which actually ties in perfect with things like the landscape around Core Web Vitals. You've got site owners that are terrified about performance, but previously they'd have to hire somebody who could decipher it all. So I think, I don't sound like blowing my own trumpet or anything, but I do agree. I think my specific background with the product is a very power user, kind of very intricate, very, very forensic user. Seeing this sort of morph is really fascinating. And I'm going to be quite interested to see what kind of new users and customers that brings on board for the company. Yeah, I find it really very interesting prospect.
Yeah, nice. I'm glad you mentioned the idea of sort of democratizing or opening up the information on the tool, because I think that's something we've viewed as a long time sort of challenge, I think, with looking at result pages in the tool. And if you know what to look for, someone like yourself, you have plenty to work with there. But I think there's this whole audience that knows that they have performance problems, and we could reach them a little bit better. So we have been trying to put some effort into that.
Of course, the flip side is that everyone can use it now, so I'm out of a job. So
yeah,
cheers, boys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest, that's the biggest focus is to.
We actually have that on company letterhead.
Internal memo going around. Is that Harry still making sites faster?
No, but I think
exactly.
The whole bridging that, I mean, you hit on it with the Web Vitals stuff, right? Like all the companies and all the folks that are focused on perf, a lot of them for the first time, right? Because of the kind of carrots and incentives that have been put out the last couple of years. And so, there's this more people than ever, probably at least looking into performance or paying attention to it in some way or another. And so a big focus for us, has been how do we bridge the gap without taking away the stuff that, power users like yourself find useful and valuable in WebPageTest. And actually, we had a lot of conversations with some of the new features too, Scott and I quite a bit about you know, what do we do for bridging the gap for folks who, you know, maybe they don't spend all day looking at performance waterfalls? And then what do we do for folks that are, you know, folks like yourself who are used to getting in the weeds and stuff like that? And actually, I think we settled on a few things that are going to be beneficial for both groups, which is kind of nice.
I mean, I think, yeah, go ahead.
No, so just the good news selfishly is that I'm still happy with the product. It's not like there's been no dumbing down. So a very well-known performance product that we all love and adore floated the idea of sort of simplifying stuff. And that would have been to the detriment of someone like me who's like, I don't need, so, I mean, it wasn't Lighthouse, but I just don't use Lighthouse. I just don't, because I could see it in a waterfall quicker than I could run a Lighthouse test anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm still over the moon. I've still got access to scripting, to the API. I've still got access to, please don't ever redesign the actual waterfall chart, because that would be a step too far for me.
I mean,
that was a
we
nervous
might
laugh.
make
That's
it
in the pipeline.
SVG or something, but
I mean, I could live with that. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy. I mean, it's not about me, right? But like, I like that the democratization hasn't come at the expense of simplifying it. Like it's an additional level, additional layer,
for sure.
Which I could I could still skip it. I could still skip it, right? But well, do you know what? This new feature isn't relevant to me. I mean, they are, right. But you know, it's not like we've sacrificed anything on along the way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, you know, the focus with this this launch was to try to expand in both directions, make it more user friendly to someone who's, you know, a site owner or non-developer, something like that. But also, and I do feel this as someone who, you know, I'm a longtime user of the product before I started working on it myself and would do audits. And I feel like we were aiming for tools that came, especially the experiments and the way that they work, some tools that make that power user more productive than they could have been because of all of the ease of, you know, being able to run these comparisons, you know, at a speed, at least personally, that I wasn't able to do when I was writing them manually.
Yeah, well, should we dive into that? Because I've got something to
Let's open it up. Yeah.
Like, so mind if I start screen sharing?
Yeah,
that was such an awful segue, because I was like, obviously I've got a tab ready to go. Like, oh hey, was this here the whole time?
Did you bring anything to show us?
Yeah, I prepared for this. All right, so what I'm going to do is share. Is that sharing? Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
There we go.
Yep.
There we go. So I guess, I mean, first thing is probably just telling people on the stream who haven't actually seen it yet what the opportunities and experiments is, and handily. So I'm about to work with iPlayer next week.
Oh, cool.
I think I'm allowed to say that. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter, because this is WebPageTest, right? So this is all publicly available. Someone could go and run their own test on iPlayer. So we're talking about these like opportunities and experiments, etc. Which is like, first thing I'm going to say is I really like the wording of this. This site took a little too long to deliver initial code, right? It began rendering content with little delay. Yeah, sorry, I read that as a little. I just said I like the wording and read it wrong. But anyway, I do like the humanized wording of that. I'm very keen on it. But let's dive in, right? Because the experiments themselves are fascinating to me. Okay, well, one thing I've always said about performance tools is that they just sort of dump data on users or customers. It's like, right, great, my LCP is slow, but why? And that's when, you know, they would hire me and I'd be like, oh, it's because of this. A lot of people, especially Rum Tool, which obviously doesn't apply to us, but especially Rum Tools, just throw data at customers, and it becomes spam after a while. It's like, well, you just keep emailing me every day with this and these numbers. What do I do about them? So I really appreciate the wording here. That's like, hey, look, this means this, and that's kind of why, and this feels good in this regard. Anyway, let's go look at the experiments.
That's great to hear.
Experiments are going to be, right, create experiments. So, defer render blocking scripts, right? So this is literally, I think what we're talking about is just taking script source equals, and just sticking, I guess, effectively at the edge, defer on there, rerunning the test, seeing what impact that had, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Three ways I would have historically done this. Firstly, with like a local override in Chrome, which problems there is I can run that in Chrome, which by definition isn't live-like because I'm using a local override. So I'd have to make adjustments for that. But then what I'd have to do is in a spreadsheet somewhere, jot down all the numbers, take my own median of 5 runs, stick that somewhere and tell the client, oh, by the way, it worked on my machine, right? The archetypal worked on my machine. So local overrides is one option for this, which just, well, it's not that good. Another thing that I often get clients to do, if we've got like a longer burn, this kind of project, or like we're experimenting with something that doesn't need doing quickly and we can just see how it does literally behave in live, I would tell clients to do something like this. And put like just a query string on the URL. So they'll just have a little bit if statement. If this query param is there, throw these defers in. No user would ever end up at this URL. Certainly, hopefully not. But we could at least test this in live. But then that takes a bit of boilerplate to have this sort of A/B testy system in place. It takes a deploy every time we want to do this. So that's for very long-term stuff. And I've done that with clients before where we wanted to just test something that was quite risky and we wanted to do it not with like even a percentage of our users. It literally just wanted to be in live, but behind this. Third way I would do it is Cloudflare workers. And oh my goodness, like the lead time on getting a Cloudflare workers are amazing. It's just I'm not very good at them. So I'd either do a Cloudflare worker and do it at the edge myself, which, once you've got the boilerplate for that set up, and massive big ups to Andy Davis for writing what I would say is probably one of the canonical articles about that.
Right.
I would use a Cloudflare worker. Now, I don't need to do any of that. I just need to basically, go and run this experiment. Benefits there is it's a click away. It happens automatically. The data persists. I don't need to send my client a promise. I can send them a web page test URL. So I'm over the moon about this kind of stuff. It's stuff that would...
Yeah, very cool. It's just... and actually, I was thinking, Tim, since Harry's not logged into Pro, I don't know if maybe one of us should flip into this.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, sure. If you don't... Harry, you go with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not logged in at the moment, unfortunately.
Okay. That's all right.
But,
okay, let's stop sharing.
I love that.
Yeah, literally. So each of those options, async scripts, defer scripts, try preload, I've got a boilerplate Cloudflare worker for each of those.
Right.
The problem is, if I want to do like async scripts and, I don't know, inline some scripts, I'd have to then make a third boilerplate, which is async some, inline others, or whatever.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the part, Scott, you described it. I think Scott was having a lot of fun playing with the experiments and stuff like that. I think, Scott, you described it as playing video games for you now, basically, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think it's interesting to see, I'll just run, we run a lot of sites through the tool now just to see what it happens to recommend. For one thing, it helps with our recommendations, just to get more variety. But yeah, I think it's interesting also to be able to click the button and see if it really fixes the thing that it suggests that it might fix, or at least if it finds something interesting, the section that you were showing.
Even better.
Go ahead.
Sorry, that was really rude of me, but one thing I tell clients is at least we know to ignore that one now.
Yes.
Like it could always be like, oh, but maybe if we did work really hard to async this script and we do, and it didn't work, and it was like, good. It's just as valuable finding out what not to do.
We actually that was one of the first bits of feedback we had from somebody publicly after running one of the experiments, is like they were thrilled about it. They had wrote this whole little mini post about how they ran an experiment and they saw that there was didn't move the needle for them. And it's funny because obviously, we've talked about this a few times now. I think the ones that are really exciting are like the ones where it moves the needle in a huge way and everybody's like, oh, that's incredible. But yeah, it's just as good to know that this doesn't do anything for you so that you don't end up wasting weeks or however long it would have taken your team to prototype that or throw something out there and test it.
Yeah. Or if it introduces a side effect that degrades performance in some way, then you're really happy you didn't implement it.
Exactly.
It's funny that you jumped right to the create experiments, by the way, because this.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too. Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott. We kind of built that bit with you in mind for a lot of that. Honestly.
Yeah,
that's what we were picturing that kind of a user.
It's like the hairy code name section of the whole tool. But yeah, I think we mentioned that we were trying to expand expand the tooling in both directions, right? Make it more user-friendly, but also make it more of a power tool for someone like yourself. And I think this is, at least for me, the section where, you know, it's not quite limitless, but there's a great deal of stuff you can do that you would have had to, you know, write some fancy JavaScript at best in a worker
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
pull off before. So that's pretty fun, at least to me. Tim and I were playing with it yesterday. We were auditing this site. Tim likes to find any excuse to talk about gardening.
Yeah,
So we're just always looking at gardening sites. and there was this one for seeds. They sell seeds, and yeah. And
what are you growing on this new plot of land, Tim?
That's a good tangent.
You know, I was just yeah, okay.
Well, what I was going to say is we found that their hero image was using a scripted approach to get the images onto the page. If you remember, like the data source and data sizes kind of precursor to responsive images, and we were able to write a create experiment that used a regular expression to find all of the cases of data followed by source or sizes, and remove the data dash part. And suddenly they had real native responsive images, right? Where the browser could discover these images early.
See, this is golden because I could tell a client, don't do this anymore. It could only be slower. But like, they've got to trust me. And I mean, hiring someone and then not trusting them is kind of, I mean, to an extent, the client's fault. But I've still got to prove it somehow. And with this, it's like, well, don't just take my word for it. Look, I can take Tim and Scott's word for it.
This was the one. This is the one I ended up sharing on Twitter. That was a result of like where we played, where we ended up doing that that custom stuff because some of it needed to be a little bespoke. But deferring preloading and then adding the priority hints had like an 11-second improvement on LCP. And then, Scott used that regex stuff to do the whole swap data source out for source and sizes, which was pretty impressive too. So
yeah, but what we found about that one was interesting, right? It ended up, we wrote it a little greedier than just to find that hero image. So they used this data source sizes thing throughout the page. And what it did was ended up including all of these images in the page very early in the waterfall and kind of changed the whole dynamic of the page load. And it wasn't necessarily better. So it was good if we just, you know, isolated it to that main image, but it needed some tuning.
Scroll down a little bit. Can you show me the waterfall where all the images are in contention?
Yeah. Let me see if I can.
Well, just scroll down where you are right there.
Oh yeah, sorry.
This was the one that didn't do the swap, and then there was another experiment that did the data.
Okay.
So in this case, it's still data source and sizes there.
Okay, it's always interesting playing guess the CDN.
That's right.
I'm gonna write my. I'm not going to embarrass him. I'm going to write it on a bit of paper in an envelope, and I'll open it afterwards, and we'll see if I can guess who's hosting that site.
Nice. That'd be a fun little game to play. Yeah.
Oh no, it's. Do you know what? I just looked and it's right there. It literally says who it is.
Yeah. In this case, it's not not the most exciting.
No. So my write down would have been wrong anyway.
But yeah, you've got the film strip right above that sort of shows that that image coming in visually quite a lot earlier. Through a couple of experiments. So that one was pretty cool.
The experiments to me are going to be easily the most useful thing because I'm not bad lazy, but every now and again I'm like, I just know for a fact that inlining this would be faster. Do I really want to bother writing a worker for it? And normally I just wouldn't. I would just tell clients just inline it. But now I can at least say inline it and it will be worth this in the lab.
Yeah, and also I recall the control setup being something that I would often forget to do properly. And I would, in an audit, I would have, the experiment looked pretty good. I didn't want to compare it to the original. I wanted, a control run that went through the worker without making changes, but I had to make sure the number of runs were the same. And I would have all these Excel documents and so very much aiming for that auditor use case with the experiments.
No, incredible. I think, I mean, I'm in no rush, but I think 'cause we got Wes on next, we might want to wrap this down soon. Do you mind if I just ask a couple more questions?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
So one thing that really interests me, if we just stay right where we are, Tim, it says needs improvement, not bad. Presumably there's one another wording that turns it green. Do you have any not like an algorithm as such, but do you have any definition of that that's, I don't want to say proprietary, but like obviously when it comes to vitals, we know that 2.5 seconds is for LTP, but have you got any similar weighting internally? Is this like strictly defined, or is it just like more than X% of the checks come back good?
Yeah.
And then also, how do you define good?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that might be going too in the weeds, and you might not be able to allow to tell me.
I think it's a fair question.
No,
I
I
think people
think
are going to ask.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a combo.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, Scott, I was going to let you run with it, but I'll go. Yeah, that's fine. It's a bit of a combo right now. And we are like, first off, the caveat is like having just put these out here, and we've got a long list of opportunities and experiments that we still want to get added that we just, that's still kind of coming up in the next weeks and months. That what's going to be signaled as needs improvement or not bad or great, is going to kind of vary a little bit as we find and fine tune it. But the actuality is it's looking at a combination of things. Like we are looking at, the recommendations and how many of those recommendations we see kind of outstanding to kind of hint that like there could be things you could do on top of this still. But we're also looking at metrics. Like we're pairing, for example, on usability, I know we're looking at total blocking time and CLS both factor into, how we kind of create that number or that needs improvement or good or whatever. So there's a bit of a combination that will be fine-tuned, I guess, going forward. But
no, there's no right or wrong answer, and I wasn't asking for any transparency or anything. I just think those would be fun conversations to have.
Well, I mean, this part is open source, so it's pretty transparent in that regard anyway. But I think, one thing that we aimed for to have our kind of unique take on this is that we wanted to present these things in such a way that if you don't get any feedback for things that you could improve, maybe you should run your test under different conditions and find them. So like everything looks good. That's kind of a shame. Maybe try it from this region of the world on a different connection speed. Maybe you'll find a weakness, right?
I'll swap you. I'm so sorry, but I will swap you Pro for life for the one killer feature that every synthetic testing tool needs. When someone comes to WebPageTest and they can pick their off-the-shelf configs, I think it's like Frankfurt, India, whatever. Mm-hmm. For the Pro feature, just have a thing. You ever seen Can I Use links up to your Google Analytics account, and it tells you this % of your customers can get that feature? Tim's laughing. He had this idea.
Yeah.
You definitely need it. I mean, I did come up with this years ago for a different client who it never came to fruition. Well, no, they never. It doesn't matter. I can't talk about it. This idea doesn't belong to anyone. Tim's had the idea already, but definitely just link it up to your analytics and say, well, based on your traffic, 3G from the US isn't appropriate. Even just crux. You've got 95% 4G. Don't be testing over slow 3. Because that's basically a lot of the tests I run. I just go and quickly look at Treo, big up Treo, see that, okay, they've got 95% 4G. Maybe I'll test it on fast 3G just to get the 95th percentile, but if we're optimizing for P75. So I've always thought that'd be a killer feature, just because that would be neat,
especially for the, supporting the audience that you already have, as opposed to, are we missing an audience because we're excluding through some, performance barrier, right?
I think basically it's not, any lab test makes an assumption, but every site is different. So Lighthouse, for example, is probably the most egregious because you can't really configure your Lighthouse mobile run. At least we can configure WebPageTest very, very well. But all synthetic tools start off with an assumption that isn't necessarily true. And a lot of people don't realize that, because what you'll see, I'll tell clients, or we'll find out in workshops, oh yeah, we could be 3 seconds faster according to WebPageTest. So yeah, that's in a lab where you're running really slowly. In live, you're not going to experience that because these tests aren't quite appropriate. Anyway, sorry, I derailed that massively.
No, I mean, it's on the queue. It's one of those things that like we've talked about, certainly the ability to pull the analytics in and kind of guide that. We have a little bit of the retroactive stuff. Like we'll pull Crux in on a Chrome test for that profile. Like, so for example, you tested this on a Moto G4, so what we would do here is, like, if there's enough crux data on the results, we pull in that for the actual mobile experience only. So we do filter for this URL specifically that you tested, and mobile in this case, to show you kind of how WebPageTest lines up with the results after the fact. But being able to pull analytics in up front to guide the test scenarios, I think, is like a whole nother level. And
I'd like to also give you some big ups for this feature, because this feature, even though it's only, I mean, everything's very Chrome oriented, but I've always liked this. If I do my initial test and it's way off the mark, it's like, okay, let's go 4G instead. So I've always liked
it's a good gut check in that way, right? Yeah,
exactly. I've always liked this, not for the numbers it gives me, but for that gut check. So I've always liked that feature.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Well, that was a good question. Did you have any other others you wanted
to? Not that I can think of. I just want to say thank you. WebPageTest, it's the single most important tool in my arsenal. I've got friends who are sick of seeing WebPageTest. I hang out with friends who look over my shoulder when I'm working, but what are you looking at that site again for? Yeah, no more questions. Just thanks for everything, and thanks for.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear.
As we know, it's been a stalwart for many years, but seeing the innovation and like it improving, which I'm not a very innovative guy. I wouldn't have thought you could improve WebPageTest, but seeing that you can, just thank you.
Okay.
Just getting started, Harry. Just getting started.
Selling yourself a bit short on the innovative bit, but we'll take it.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Good. Have I innovated anything? I order the same drink every time we go out.
That's fair. Yeah.
Well, Harry, first of all, thank you for coming on. Thanks for taking some time. For those who don't know, Harry Roberts is going to be, I think you have a workshop coming up in San Francisco. Is that right?
Correct. In 10 days, perhaps.
Yeah, something like that.
Great.
So we'll be seeing each other in San Francisco at Smashing. So I'm sure you'll be featuring some of these amazing these delightful features during your workshop.
Seems likely, doesn't it?
Yeah, something like that. But outside of that, where can people find you?
Same thing everywhere. This horrible handle CSS wizardry that I picked when I was 17. So that's all I'm gonna put on my gravestone, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, you should have been over at CSS Day today.
I should have. Oh man, I should have been.
Yeah, something like that. But I'm not going to get into craziness because I'm going to get a crazy answer apparently. But that being said, Harry, thank you again for coming on and sharing some insights and the few questions. We'll have to bring you back on when you've done a complete shakedown of opportunities and experiments, and let your mind sort of take over and show us what's going on with a tool that we work on.
I'd be more than happy. Just any excuse to hang out with you folk is always a treat. So yeah.
Yeah, this was
awesome.
Fun. Thanks for coming on.
Cool. Just a bit of an obtuse question that shouldn't really be going out live. But after this, shall I just leave our little backstage thing and shall I just go and watch the rest of it on Twitch? You won't need me again later.
I don't believe you will. So you'll be able to watch it on your big screen, Twitch live, and you'll be able to have the echoing happen.
Unless you want to defend yourself after whatever is said in the next round.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll just start. Oh no, Wes has got more followers than me, so I won't start any beef on Twitter.
It's all good. All right. Well, Harry, thanks again, and we're going to remove you from the stage, just like this.
All right. Thanks, Harry.
And speaking of Wes,
hey, Wes.
Hey, Wes.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good.
Great.
Wes, is your mic all right? Let me double check here. Say something.
Yeah. Is it working? Check. 1, 2, 3.
Uh-oh. Got a little robot Wes going on.
Oh, shit. Okay, hold on.
It's like Doctor Who. You guys remember Doctor Who? It was like the robots would talk funny.
Haven't really watched a lot of Doctor Who, but we did definitely have a Twitch episode where Scott went all robotic for a while, and I died laughing.
Yeah.
It was one of our more professional moments.
Yeah, we put the filter on Wes this time.
Exactly.
whoever comes on for the first time.
Maybe it's I know Wes is always experimenting, so you might have
You're,
like
you're
some kind
muted
of,
now.
yeah. Now he's muted.
I tried to unmute you and it says your mic is not connected, Wes.
Oh,
And now he's gone.
okay, maybe he's just gonna pop
He
back
didn't like
in.
the robot filter and now he's out. See, I told you that was a bad idea, Scott.
Oh, it's all good. And he's back right now. Let's bring him back in.
Is that working?
Oh yeah, beautifully.
Better.
Sorry,
Yep.
you know what?
Yep.
We're about to move, and I've been fussing with everything, and something is weird, and I just have to plug and unplug. I think I have like dirty power or something. Something got changed, and
well, we can
I'm
hear
not
you
gonna
now.
be here long enough to figure it out.
It's all good. Well, first of all,
Yeah.
congratulations on buying a new place, sir.
Thank you.
And it's I'm gonna have to say this because we started the stream talking about bikes. I know Wes is a infamous bike reseller. For those who follow Wes on Instagram.
Yeah, I actually just sold all my stuff. I had a garage full of, I don't know, like 15 old classic, like 80s 10 speeds, 12 speeds, and
Oh wow, very cool.
I kept like one of the best of everything that I'm gonna use to build my own little ride up. But then I'm out of the business now. Every now and then I still I found one in the garbage the other day, and I was like, pulled over the car, threw it in the back, and flipped it like within an hour.
Amazing. I love it.
That's great.
It is great. I see it all the time on Instagram. I'm like, damn, where'd you get that? So it's
always got my eyes open. Even my kids know now when it's like a garbage day, they keep their eyes out just in case you find something.
That's amazing.
Nice.
That's amazing. So the reason why at least I want to have Wes on, is the fact that it would be great to have, again, what we've been doing is having someone like Harry Roberts, who, as we heard, very proficient in using WebPageTest, has been using it for years. And, to say that he deep dives would be an absolute understatement. But I thought it'd be very interesting to have an amazing developer, full stack developer, educator like Mr. Wes Bos to come on, who is not the most familiar with WebPageTest. And now we have, what we would consider I wouldn't say drastically different product, but we certainly do have amazing features that might give WebPageTest a whole new luster. And to have someone like Wes come on and sort of walk them through some of the big features that we've introduced, and just some of the classics out of WebPageTest that he may not know about. So what I'm going to do is, as usual, I'm going to say good afternoon, Wes, Tim, Scott, and I'm going to see myself off the stage and watch the chat as Patrick Meenan has just appeared. So I'm just going to say this. Boom. Have fun, gents.
All right. Thanks, Andre. All right, Wes, thanks so much for coming on. We are big fans. What's going on lately with your courses? Do you have anything newly released?
Yeah, I've been working on a TypeScript course for better part of a year now, and I'm almost at a point where that sucker's ready to go live. So I'm pretty excited about that. So yeah. Oh,
that's awesome. Yeah, I know I've taken some of your courses in the past, and they're very good.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's always crazy for me to hear that from people, because like I met you like 12 years ago back in the jQuery days, and now here we are 12 years later, and there's people that have like taken my courses that I used to look up to, so it's kind of cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's also, I think it's really cool to have you on because you're someone that I think I and a lot of people look to for what's new and good in practices in JavaScript and frameworks, trends, things like that. And I feel like recently there's been kind of a very visible push in the framework space of moving towards performance practices, like in ways that
Yeah.
weren't as, I guess, as popular maybe in recent years. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, I think like for a long time we've talked about like, yeah, perf is important and stuff like that, but I think for most people it was like, yeah, but that's too much work. And or like yeah, I should, but like, yeah, we'll get around to it, like throw a bug in there and whatever. And I think we're getting to a point now both where people care a lot more, but it seems to be a lot easier to do that type of stuff with a lot of the frameworks. And or sort of maybe specifically with the server side rendering stuff, people are sort of second guessing a lot of the whether we're pre-rendering or rendering on the server or stale rendering, whatever you call that. It's kind of neat to see a lot of these ideas start to pop up now, and people get excited about it.
Yeah, that's cool. It seems like Next and Nuxt were kind of the first ones that I heard that were kind of making that, particularly user friendly in the React and Vue space, and now we have Remix. What are you looking at recently that's particularly exciting?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about the Remix stuff in terms of how they're approaching it, because to me it feels a lot like when we got like Kensey Dodds came up with React testing library, and I tried it and I was like, oh, this is not React, this is just JavaScript, and then I would try a Remix and we go, oh, this is not React. Like, obviously you loop over stuff with React and you use JSX. Obviously then you can make your own components and stuff like that, but a lot of the core ideas are just vanilla JavaScript or just like web standards, and I think that's really cool to see that we've worked so hard on all of these web standards, and now we're starting to like see them being baked into everything from as simple as parsing a URL. Don't need a lib for that, all the way through to like forms and whatnot. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I've been watching all the Svelte stuff as well. Which is pretty cool.
Svelte's really neat.
From a point of view of like how easy it is. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I always think that's always been really interesting me to over the years of like the web stuff, is to see that sort of cycle, I guess, right? Where like, it seems like for a little bit, things will something will go out there. It'll kind of push the envelope a little bit about what we're able to do. And maybe that comes with some trade-offs in the process. And then we start to find ways to roll that stuff back into the browser and on the standards, and it stabilizes for a little bit. And then something else kind of pushes forward a little bit. And it feels like it sort of evolves a bit like that. And I think we are kind of at that kind of come back to the browser standard part of that cycle. And then I'm sure we'll get another push through, but like, definitely a pattern.
We saw that with jQuery. Obviously the browser has literally everything you can do in jQuery now. It's awesome APIs, and then we hit like single page apps and whatnot, and now we're again, like we said, we're coming back to. I'm curious what the thing right now is the server side rendering and doing everything on the server, maybe even without JavaScript, which is wild to think. And I'm curious what the next cycle of that will be, if that's going to come anytime soon.
Yeah, me too. You mentioned jQuery. A lot of jQuery kind of led the direction of features that landed in the browser that we can use without it now, right? And I kind of I'm so curious to see what the React kind of era of JavaScript patterns will end up being things we can use without.
There's people screaming web components right now into the abyss listening to this. So we'll see.
I might have screamed that once or twice too.
We've got one of those in place. I was going to say we're using one of those on WebPageTest now, thanks to you, Scott.
That's true. Our global header is just purely to kick off the JavaScript to make the menus work. I forget, just minor enhancements. That's my favorite part of web components, is just the life cycle. Just being able to not wait for DOM ready and have a little more just contextual event cycle when you can get things enhanced, so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just using it for that. I think, a bunch of detailed summary events that open on hover and not just click, things like that.
Oh,
But
yeah. Cool.
yeah. So just a wrapper. But yeah, I think, should I share screen, Tim? We could just kind of go through a little bit of WebPageTest stuff recently.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. I gave it a rundown through my own website through it, and it's kind of interesting. It's not as mean to me as Lighthouse is on my own website. And like the stuff seems really cool. That am I going into it again?
I was gonna say your mic is deteriorating, I think, Wes.
Okay. Hold on 1 second.
Is in the meanwhile, while we're fixing a mic, are we? Yeah, looks like I'm sharing because I got the.
Can you hear me on that?
Much better. Yeah.
Oh,
sorry. Okay,
better.
I just switched to my MacBook Pro microphone, so
It happens.
I think I got a janky cord or something. Cool.
All right, cool. Yeah, and Tim turned off the robot filter as well.
No,
so
right,
that's
exactly.
nice of him.
We're done messing with you now.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe as a little segue, we could look at a experiment that Tim and I were looking at yesterday, because it's sort of relevant to that whole server-side rendering discussion. I'm on the homepage here of WebPageTest, and as we know, we can run a test from here. We ran one on just a sample, to be clear, a sample client-side rendered page on the web, which is Airbnb's homepage a couple days ago. And one of the new features that I've got a little one in the background now. You can enjoy that. One of the new features that comes with the insights that we're providing on these result pages. If you look at the opportunities page of a test result, deals with that trade-off a little bit. Like if you're actually testing a site that's heavy on the client side rendering and not so much on the server side rendering, you can get down into these quickness observations, and towards the bottom there's one that gives you a comparison. So it says a significant portion of HTML content, 200 almost 300 kilobytes of HTML was generated by JavaScript after it was delivered. And this one is kind of cool because in my experience as a developer, I've been working with clients who have a client-side rendered site, and I make the suggestion, like, perhaps you might consider rendering this particular page on the server instead. But the leap from making a suggestion like that to actually having something to test in a lot of cases was just a great deal of work. So this tries to mimic that. It doesn't always get it right, but it was kind of fun in this case. We were looking at the result of this one, and it was pretty dramatic. I'm trying to find let's see.
I think you were on the right one. You just got to hop to your experiment result view of it, right?
Yeah, probably. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, so up here you can start to see some of the metric changes, which look good already, like LCP, largest contentful paint was faster. But really, when you get into that video or the timeline, you start to see just how much it can matter to have real HTML, especially when you're dealing with images up front. Just letting the browser to discover those images early here, as opposed to probably 6-7 seconds later, 8 seconds later on the live site. So it got me thinking. I mean, this again doesn't always run on every client-side rendered site because they're so varied in how they're implemented, but sort of relevant to what we were talking about.
Cool. Yeah. That's pretty neat. So how do these experiments work? I'm actually curious. Do you go out and fetch the rendered HTML and then like store that and then serve it up, or how does that work?
That's exactly what's happening for that particular one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in many ways, that's sort of dumb. Like it's not doing anything particularly smart in that particular one. It's just the last state that the DOM happened to be in. We capture that HTML, store it static, and then serve that up initially as if that was what the server brought.
That's cool.
Sometimes to the detriment of a page, particularly if along with that rendered HTML comes the scripts to re-render it or to render it for the first time. So what I've found is sometimes I'll pair that experiment with disabling scripts just to see, okay, I want the initial render. There we go. And then I'll go down to down here where it says disable scripts and, do that one as well. And that'll just, make it so the React page doesn't keep reacting itself.
Re-rendering itself. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And the stuff that Harry was talking about, the proxy, that's pretty cool because that will just rewrite the HTML and possibly other stuff on the fly, so that you can test it out. Is that actually a viable way to even, like, if I had a big organization and we were like, okay, we need to put defer on it, and it's like, well, that's going to take 12 months and $1 million of budget to add defer, and like we're going to need an on-site to do it. The big companies, how they are, right? Like we're 12 CMSs deep into this thing and we can't figure out where to add the defer tag for that script. Would that be it? Like, is that actually a way to fix it? Like, could I throw something in the middle there to rewrite that HTML on the fly, or is that just a good way to like experiment to see if it actually would be worth doing it?
No, I mean, if you're using one of those, go ahead, Scott.
I'll let you talk for a bit.
Let me take that one. Yeah, and if you're using one of those CDN providers that has the edge computing layer, which increasingly is what like all of them, like, I mean, you've got Cloudflare Workers, Akamai, Fastly, NetFi, everybody's got something nowadays. I mean, like you're using one of them already. The overhead on that edge computing layer is usually pretty small. And it's a good place to apply certain, some of those optimizations is maybe a quick hit way of doing it. Like I know, we do some of that, like we've got some edge computing that we're using on the blog to self-host like Cloudinary resources, right? Like instead of having to go out to the third-party domain for Cloudinary, we can use the proxy and pull those in really quick, and it comes down a little faster that way. I know there's been people on the SEO side of things, interestingly, who have done all sorts of funky things with workers, some sort of edge computing layer to do, changes that's basically the problem. They wouldn't be able to apply those at scale otherwise. Maybe it's CMS layers, or maybe it's just legacy architecture, but at an edge computing layer, they're able to actually write a little proxy and do something there and apply the changes there. So it's absolutely a thing. So yeah, I think it's a feasible way of handling it in many situations.
That's and is there, we had a couple shows on our podcast about like the edge workers and whatnot. And is that so fast because it also like it's run on Cloudflare servers or whoever servers, and they are connected to a big fat pipe of the internet that they can get it to, or is that just because they're fast in general?
I mean, it's
that's good.
Gotta love video, man. I was gonna say, I think it's partly, I mean, depending on what obviously there's some variance, right? Like even with some of the experiments that we have, we see they're a little bit more expensive than other ones. So, like the one we just showed, for example. Yeah, that one's an expensive
because there's a fetch involved. Some of them that are just pass through, and we're just adding an attribute or something, and we don't have to get content, like static content in that case, are going to be very, very quick, right? But still, we're noticing that, when I hit go on this, for example, it'll go to the loading page for these experiments. And one thing we do is we always run a control that goes through that proxy, but doesn't change the page at all. And the reason we do that is because the proxy itself tends to change the nature of how that page loads a little bit, usually faster, just because of less latency. That these hosts are all over the place on their CDN, probably closer to the tested device that we're running. So yeah, it's interesting. When you look at any of these results, you're looking head to head with both runs that were passed through that proxy server, and only one had modifications. But,
the other thing to keep in mind on those is that like any connection that is coming from that edge worker, right? Like if it has to go make a fetch, or it has to go connect to a domain or whatever, that's happening at the worker level, which is at a CDN level, which means you've got a reliable, beefed up machine with a high-speed connection. And so, when you compare the stability and predictability of running things like that in that environment versus running them on like over the network on the browser, when it could be somebody with a $100 Android device, or it could be, whatever, like there's a lot more reliability and predictability to that performance at the edge layer as well.
For every website. That's cool. I have another question about this. And this may be something you offer. Performance decay over time. So I launched my website a couple years ago, and I just ran it. I ran it through again versus when I started, and the scores are less than when I launched it. And I don't know why. I've added stuff over time. I've changed stuff's broken, whatever. Like, how do you keep an eye on slow decay, where it's not like, okay, I launched this thing and it went down, but like, I don't know, you know what I mean? That happens to websites.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got so first off, for that, the best thing to do there is have some sort of continuous monitoring to be able to like notice when that stuff is happening, kind of before it catches up on you months later, right? We are working on, something around there. There's different solutions I know available for that kind of stuff as well. But that's a big piece of it. And then just having kind of some alerting based off of that. So if things start to dip below a certain threshold, or some issue starts to creep up, like, what's going on and you find out proactively. We do, but even within like just, web page tests and what we offer today, there are things that we've done specifically to try and help to pull some of those things out. Like the visual comparison page that has been in web page test for a while and got some nice, improvements and stuff fairly recently. Like we try to call out, what are those different gaps and comparing, so that if you're seeing that those metrics are different over time and you do happen to have a test of before, you can pull in before and do a little bit of diagnostic and see what's up, like what changed. But ultimately the answer is like, you want to be on top of that thing. And so the more you're kind of watching that continually in a monitoring thing is better.
Yeah, that's good. I remember back in the day when I had client websites, and you would like cut up your sources. Like you have a slider and you cut out your sources from Photoshop and you upload the like compressed versions, and then 2 weeks later they would upload like a 5 meg JPEG straight off their SLR camera, and you're like, what are you doing? And you're like, it's kind of slow to load, like obviously they got to put stuff in place. It's much easier now to crop and resize and whatever, but
still see that though.
Be neat to be able to catch that stuff.
I still see that. I chatted with someone not too long ago, and we found out that's exactly what was happening, is that it was multi-megabyte photos and stuff getting dropped in. So it still happens.
Oh man, that's good.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something real funny is, oh my God, Doug Sillers, someone, a few of you might know. I think Scott, you might know him. Tim, Wes, I'm not sure if you know this gentleman. Hangs around the perf space. He actually wrote a long blog post about how, you talk about the DSLR to web path. He talked about the screen grab to web path, and he was able to sort of like through like BigQuery and whatnot, find how many websites were, likely using screenshots and not optimizing them.
That's a big problem. I do it myself. I post PNGs, screenshot PNGs to Twitter all the time because I can't be bothered to crop and resize and convert.
I mean, that's why Twitter does the heavy lifting. But if you send that to your own site, it's a different problem. I mean, it's beyond the scope of this stream, but there's a little one-liner that you could put into the terminal to change your PNG screenshots to JPEGs. Just an FYI.
But going back to what I mean,
I've seen that.
Just to bring it full circle to what Wes was talking about at the beginning, though, when he was talking about, like, you were talking about all the stuff that's getting baked into like these platforms and frameworks now, and how this stuff's getting easier, right? Like, that's how the real change happens for things like those, like images and things like that. Like, there's a great talk, I've referenced it a few times, from Ilya Grigorik a few years back, where he talks about like the head, tail, and torso, or head, torso, and tail, I guess would be the right order, of the web, and how like moving performance at the head is one thing, because there you've got the people, like maybe it's the folks who are right on the edge, they're paying super close attention to everything going on. That's one way of how you move that, like top X% or top 100 sites or whatever. But if you want to get that torso and especially the tail of the web to improve, that's where you have to make those changes at the platform. Like, they have to be changed in the browser, they have to be changed in the CMS, the framework, whatever it happens to be, because those defaults have to be there. And like, images are one of those. Like, we just got to get to a point where the tools or whatever we're using that we're publishing our sites on, as much as possible, takes care of that, because we're going to forget otherwise.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And like you said, there have been many experiments, at the browser level, trying to manage that, and but luckily, we have our own experiments to show you what may happen if you actually employ best practices. So, that's why we're here.
Good segue there. Good
You
segue.
like that? You like that?
Carefully crafted.
Smooth. Hey, Wes, listen, thank you for coming on. I know this is a little quick, but
it was good to see you.
Likewise, for sure.
We definitely want to give you a vibe of what is actually going on over at WebPageTest. I know we've talked about being on your podcast, so this is, I guess, the appetizer or something of the sort. Before we come by, hopefully we
Beautiful. All right, let me know when you want. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so
And
much,
Wes, by the way, not that people don't know, but where can we find you?
WesBos.com, and all the links are on there. I mostly hang out on Twitter and my podcast.
There you go. All right, folks. Wes, thank you for coming down, and I'm going to shoot you a little email as well, so I might have a little surprise for you. Cheers. All the best.
All right. Thanks, Wes.
Gentlemen.
That was fun.
Totally. Some light conversations, slightly different, two great developers, but, at different levels of their sort of knowledge of WebPageTest, which is totally cool. But both definitely well learned and sort of understand the machinations of the backgrounds of WebPageTest and want to know kind of like what could how things could be better. So that was totally cool. That being said, few announcements. Tomorrow is Lazy Load. It's a conference that takes place online that we are sponsoring. A lot of fantastic guests. Last year, I believe Pat Meenan spoke there. If Patrick is still in the chat, and many others. But this year we have people like Annie Sullivan, Farshad Irani, Lova Fuller, who just shot me an email, so that's top of mind, and many more. So. Folks, if you go to, I believe, our account at Real WebPageTest, you'll be able to see some tweets about the conference, and also from my page as well, at Henri Helvetica on Twitter. I'm also mentioning this because Tim and Scott are also running a workshop on opportunities and experiments. I was going to say OPEX because I saw it in one of our emails. But opportunities and experiments, but obviously about WebPageTest. So definitely look into that. and you'll see the link on our pages. Is there anything that that's immediate that I'm missing here?
I think you covered it pretty well there.
I think so. Yeah, nailed it.
I think so. And something just popped into my head. I'll talk about that later on. Folks, thank you very much for joining us as usual. I don't think we have anything scheduled immediately for next Thursday, but I'll have to double check. But if we do, you'll hear from us. Follow us on Twitter. Oh man, I guess I should bring the banners back. Follow us on Twitter, of course, if you're not. And as usual, you can follow Scott on Twitter for amazing insights, and you can also follow Timothy Cadlick on Twitter.
For amazing insights, though. I don't promise any of that.
I was
Gardening,
as
Scott pointed out, it'll be gardening stuff.
Yeah, we want to know what kind of plants you're growing.
Yeah.
Anyways, folks, thank you very much for joining us, and catch us at a different time, same channel. Cheers.
All right.
Cheers.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. All right.
Bye now.